Hey guys, I'm welcome to the Talking In Stations weekday kind of daily show. It is Monday, the 17th of August, 2020, and there seems to be some crazy shit afoot in HiSec. We have some people in chat with me. Let me just grab the list. We have Caleb here. Say hey, Caleb.
Hey, Caleb.
We have Spod.
Hello.
We have... yeah, try and not make that a little bit weird there, Spod. We have Dutch Gunner here as well.
Hi, everyone.
We have Fonsui here. He's muted up. I'm not sure whether he is actually here or not, but if he is here, he will say hey. He's not here at the moment, but he will be later on, so, watch this space. We have Gregorian Masu as well.
Hi.
And we have Skyus Falkenhout.
Heyo.
There we go. So there's some interesting stuff going on in Eve today. Something that basically has been predicted for quite some time. Has kind of happened in Niarja. Who wants to? You want to go with this, Caleb?
I'm actually, well, a little bit, because today I'm going to have to eat my hat, because I'm pretty much on record for heckling Ashtarothi a little bit when I kind of said that all this PvE stuff is kind of not newsworthy, and I'm almost happy to say that I am completely wrong, at least when it comes to this Triglavian invasion stuff, because this is definitely newsworthy. It has massive ramifications, and I am desperately hoping that it's a success for the Triglavian, because aside from the fact that they're taking goons' jobs and making Burn Jita obsolete, this is definitely interesting.
Oh yeah, for sure. So if you guys don't know already, Niarja is being invaded by Triglavians. Does anybody want to give a rundown as to why specifically Niarja is such a big issue when it comes to invasions?
I think I want to take the whole importance of Niarja as well, just a little bit, and see if someone can pick it up after me, because this is really about the fact that there's a long history of trade routes in HiSec in EVE Online. I'm not going to take you all the way down that history thing, but the thing is that Niarja is smack on one of these massive roads basically from Jita to Amar Space. That means that if this succeeds, the new route to Amar Space is potentially going to be something like 45 jumps. So it almost completely cuts off Amar Space from the trade route. This is not just important. It's not exactly going to kill it, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later if we get the chance and the time. It's of course a bit of a bad thing, but it has some very, very interesting upsides, and it's got a lot of dramatic meta effects in the game. So I am amazingly numbing on my hat right now and saying, oh my god, Ashtarothi, you were so right about these things, and I was very, very wrong.
So yeah, Niarja is part of the route that goes from Jita to Amar. Obviously, you have various different trade routes in New Eden, in HiSec specifically, in the faction HiSec space. Essentially there's 4, right? But there's really only 2. Like, there's 2 of absolute importance, and then there's like 2 others that are kind of like, sort of lower level, lower key, kind of like trade areas, as it were, right? So you have Jita. Everyone knows Jita. You have Amar, and then you have Ren's, and you have Dodixie, right? But the two that basically see the most traffic are Jita and Amar, and so the trade route between there, as you can see up on the screen, is it goes from Jitter to Amar. It's a 10 jump route or 10 gate route, and the only 0.5 system in there is Niarja. And that happens to be because it was predicted a little while ago, because the invasion systems for Triglavian seem to be predominantly blue star systems, right? And I think there's so other ones.
Blues and yellows are the ones that the Triglavians are willing or able to take into liminality and change the security status. Other systems with other suns do get invaded, but they fizzle out.
Also, to clarify, not all yellow stars, but just G5 yellow stars can go liminality.
Yeah. So if we're going to go to Niarja now, like I'm just going to put this up on the screen. But here we are. Here's Niarja. So Niarja, you go to the Celestials, you'll see that the sun is a blue small star. So people have been predicting that that Triglavians were going to at some point invade Niarja. Today it has happened. So that's it's a bit of a crazy kind of situation that we have. Anybody know what's going on in the system right now? Like, or the situation in the system? I think Sky is Sky, you put a little took a little screenshot of part of it, right? I'll grab that and put that up on the system. I'll grab that, put that up on the screen right now. Just give me a second. There we go. So at the moment, Trigs are pushing it pretty heavily into their favor. So and the issue there is if they get to actually push it all the way, that it will actually drop to what is considered to be like fake low sec, or that kind of thing. But essentially it's low sec, but without the it's low sec when it comes to security, at least.
Crime Watch is the only system that was modified for the invasion security status changes. So that means that the way the Concord will respond has been changed.
Yeah,
and also you can't use it to declare wars.
But the important thing for high sec and for trade routes, what that means is, with Crime Watch not there, essentially what that means is anybody jumping into it can get attacked. So freighters, carrying cargo to and from Jeddah, to Amar and from Amar, on that route can basically get blown up with impunity, really, right?
Yeah, right now these routes that connect the trade hubs exist as all high sec. So there's police in every single system that the freighters will have to pass through. Because there's police there, people are, discouraged from ganking. In order to kill, you have to suicide. If this system is taken over by the Triglavians and the police are removed, then this route now has a system in it where there's no police, and people can jump in and kill freighters without suiciding them. And that is the issue. And in order to get from Jeddah to Amar, staying in all systems that are all policed, if this system goes away, will take 40 to 50 jumps.
Not to mention, if you do jump in and you don't have positive trick standing, the Triglavians will attack and most likely kill anything that isn't quick enough.
Right. So the standing is one issue. You can now side with either Edencom or the Triglavian. So one of those two sides will attack you and the other one will not. But the greater concern is the players in this particular case.
And so what we have on the screen at the moment is the current route that as of at the moment, that is viable for traders to go to and from Jeddah. That changes if Niarja, which is the system just here, goes to fake low set, right? If that changes, bit of bit of screen kind of like a
then it's the
fuckery
dirt
at the
road.
moment. Then it's the dirt road, and then
it's
the. Sorry, what?
Yeah, just to give a slight correction, if it goes final liminality, it will go one step further than fake low sec and drop to fake null sec. So you don't even have security status changes if you kill someone.
Ooh.
Yeah, when a system reaches final liminality, then then police forces crime watch is removed entirely, and the system is considered null sec for that in that way.
But the difference between it's not really a case of whether it goes to nullsec, but like the big difference is just if it goes to lowsec, right? Fake lowsec.
Yeah,
because then people can
direct
just shoot
Concord
stuff.
response.
Yeah, and people like freighters count on that to basically keep their cargo somewhat safe. Like essentially, the idea is that you only travel with the amount of cargo that is that kind of. I think it's like half the value equals the amount of the cost to actually blow it up in terms of ships, right? So it's kind of like that sort of like calculation with how much you can take.
Math.
Yeah,
when you're traveling through areas with police, then you use suicide math. When you're traveling through areas without police, then all bets are off.
Exactly. So suicide math has basically protected people from moving stuff to and from, like to Amar and Jitter, and like on that route. Once that changes, or if that changes in Niarja, then essentially what you get is where is it? This route, which is what the fuck.
Yeah, and then if I'm not mistaken, I heard that PushX and Red Frog are already crunching numbers on what the new cost will be. So they are already prepping for this. This is a big thing, right? It's almost like an embargo. It's not that it's going to completely dry up. It's just going to shift the markets a lot because you will not have the opportunity to do effective arbitrage from Jita to Amar anymore at all, or vice versa.
Yeah. Like, this route is just insane. Like, it goes from a 10 jump route to a 46 jump route. And, granted, what that means is people can still go from Jita to Amar safely. Relative safety, right? Still going through HiSec entirely, but it's the round trip time is significantly different. If you've run, freighters from Jita to Amar before with 10 jumps, you know how long it takes. Can you imagine how long it takes when it quadruples or quintuples almost in like length? And not only that, right? In the current route right now, Niarja is the only 0.5 system, right?
Oh, I just want to answer chat because someone is saying, why is CCP changing the route? That's exactly what's not happening. This is why I was eating my hat. It's players changing this. If it succeeds, it's players changing the route.
Exactly. And so the kind of the interesting thing is if Niarja falls to 0.4, like the reason why Niarja is a place where a lot of people tend to gank HiSec freighters, a little bit in Madramare, but like mostly in Niarja, because 0.5, it's a 0.5 system, and the lower down in like security status goes, the longer the kind of response time is for Concord, as far as I know. Is that correct, right?
That is correct.
So the difference between that is there's only one system in this current route, which is 0.5, which is Niarja. But if this changes and Niarja goes to low sec, and this route ends up being the route that people tend to take to move stuff from Amar to Jitter and back, this route has like a whole bunch of 0.5 systems. Like we're talking Bale, Alpha, Deltol, Coliole, Utinidar, Heck. There's a bunch of them. Like, and these are all potential possible places where gankers can set up to blow stuff up. It won't just be that one system of Niarja.
Which is also something like the cost of shipping might actually not just go up by 500%. It might actually be more than that, right? Because someone like Red Frog needs to take those things into account as well when they calculate the price.
Oh, for sure.
One thing to take into consideration is that on the route are, as you mentioned, Hack and Rens. So those are currently minor trade hubs who may profit a bit from being on a major trade route, basically.
Actually, very true.
Yes and no, right? You're right that it could become this almost like the Silk Route thing, where even though it's long, it's still active and being used. But I think much more likely, at least a massive point of this, is going to be how the nullsec import-export thing shifts. And this is something that we will most likely talk more about later.
I mean, do we want to talk about nullsec doing stuff in the invasion at the moment?
No, well, there's a little bit about that, yes. And if you want to take that, please do, Skiers.
I mean, like, the only group I know of that has actually pinged and made it a priority is Brave. I think the link to the ping was also shared in the TIS Discord. And what they basically said is that the trade route is so important to them that they would prefer to defend the system, and basically asked their players to do so, or at least don't fight against it. And I think that is also the legacy at large position, but of that I am not sure. But I have seen brave Ology fleets in Niarja doing work against the Triglavian interests, so against our fleets.
And interestingly, this is tied a lot, quite directly, or at least very strongly tied into the TTT trade hub in Perimeter and the whole HiSec structure shenanigan. Interestingly, this is one of those examples where something like, the HiSec markets were ignored by nullsecers for quite a while, quite a long while, before they figured out that there was actually money to be made. And this is another of those examples where something that would normally not really have the eye of nullsec because it's really not important to them, suddenly something actually becomes important. And I would say that in this case, I think you can say that this is a PAPI strategic interest, and there might actually be heavy activity from them on this and not just Brave.
Yep. This thing that you put into chat, by the way, Skies, is this the ping from who from?
From Brave, as far as I understand.
Okay, cool. Cheers.
Why is it a big deal for Legacy? This is what I don't understand. I understand they've got the trade tower, but why necessarily would Amar losing its easy connection be a big deal for that?
Well, it's a bit of a long thing, and there's a lot of details. This is really about how nullsec right now imports and exports to these places and how they then distribute them out, right? Because one of the things is that, when nullsec needs ISK, they kind of do a shipment or whatever to the places that they prefer to export their goods to. And this shifts Amar, right? Because what will most likely happen is, because it's cut off from direct arbitrage, the price development in Amar will shoot up, right? Prices will be higher, profit margins will be better. That means that there is more incentive to actually export from Null to Amar, at least if there is enough demand to cover a spike in price. Of course, it might actually dry up and get supplied because the demand there is still a lot lower than, say, in Jita, but it's still something that you would want to do, right? And because it's cut off, it also is going to be more interesting for starting, say, a secondary hub. And it also ties into the fact that you might see a lot of market shares shift from Jita to somewhere like Dodixie, which again is going to make someone like Astarothi quite happy, because in Sank you have this whole setup of actually two low-sec areas supplying an import-export location. One of these is heavily controlled by Willy and the TTT group. And I think the other one is actually Pandemic Legion, but I could be wrong. I know that Mercenary Coalition has been involved in that. And that means that there's a bit of competition in locations to ship in and out. A lot of things will happen from this.
Yeah, this looks to be. Sorry, go first, guys.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's also a thing from a lore standpoint that's quite important. Like, all the Triglavian invasions have been covered quite extensively by CCP. And as we have seen, they are now synchronizing systems outcome with Serenity. So we are pretty sure that there will be permanent, bigger changes coming to those systems. Like the speculation about gate structures changing. We have a Triglavian station on Hobolakes that is not yet in the game. So it may very well be that we see in Niarja further changes down the road.
There's quite a lot of things that we could tinfoil on, and you mentioned a few of them. I'd go with a more market-oriented one. If you have effectively almost like embargoed or locked off MR space from the rest of the trade hubs in EVE, what would be logical is to then say, okay, this is where we might need to change something like the costs from NPC side. And you would say, okay, let's cut the MR broker fees and taxes down, because that would be the natural way to compete with this strain. And then let's increase them in JITA. That means that suddenly you don't have these flat structures. You basically have a dynamic design almost, where there is actually a difference between MR space, Galenta space, and Caldari space. And that would be very interesting, because the next logical step after that would be to consider bringing in Concord, Ulay, and rolling back to the old highway system. There's many, many, many options, and knowing the current team working on these things, well, the economic team and of course Team Ra, they are just very much going to have an influence on how these things progress. And I think they have bigger visions and ideas than we might actually think.
So one of the interesting things that I was kind of wondering about is when it comes to Niarja, and it comes to say, for example, sort of brave forces or maybe even legacy forces, kind of like, trying to secure Niarja in some way, shape, or form because of the profitability of the Tranquility trade towers, right? If it falls below and it goes to low sec, like I'm just spitballing here, like you guys can pew it if you kind of want, if you feel like it's not viable in any way, shape, or form. I kind of know that like it is kind of like maybe a bit of an unviable thing, but that system of Niarja would still be could potentially at least still be viable for for freighters to go through, so long as they have escorts, so long as the system is locked down consistently, or at least locked down in certain time zones or time periods where they can push through, freighters and that kind of thing. With the appropriate gate camps, with the appropriate webbers to web large ships off the gate, very quickly, kind of thing. I don't know how you guys feel about that, like about that, the viability about that, the profitability about that, because that could be a profitable venture.
It's definitely in the realm of possibility. And what I like about what you just explained is that I feel like that is putting more agency in player hands, and I like that. It's just we need some a few design changes to make it really something that people would invest in, I think. But again, if there is enough profitability in it, definitely it will emerge eventually. This is similar back to the fact that Null came into HiSec with structures, and Null is now also showing an interest in the Triglavian invasion, because more and more agency is being put in the player's hands, and I like that design direction.
It would still be viable, but people have to be aware of different things, because one of the things that we've noticed, for example, is that let's say Niarja becomes a final liminality system, people with positive trick standings could still be able to fly through, but it is still possible that Edencom has forces on the entry gate into and out of Niarja on that route. So you will need escorts, either to help punch in or either to help you punch out that specific freighter. And it's should it fall, it's gonna be touch and go in which direction people are going to see opportunities. Like people with positive trick standings might set up shop. They might even say, hey, levy a toll or something to help people ship through, or to give them clearance to fly through. Or it could be an absolute hellhole that most people say, like, we don't go to Niarja anymore.
Yeah, Caleb, this actually no, this was a little while ago. In actual fact, I just bring up this D-scan. I think you probably it's a D-scan of Niarja, right? So it's who's in the system at the moment, or who was at the system at around about 3 minutes past the hour, so about half an hour ago, kind of thing. But so there's definitely fighting going on. There's definitely a lot of the tug of war kind of game is going on quite significantly.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. I don't know how much presence they're actually showing yet, the people that have pinged, but I think it's important that there's an interest, and this shows that we might actually get this weird integration of high-sec activity with null improving, and getting more codependency and interest in, well, the high-seckers will maybe start showing an interest in what's going on in null, because it's going to be very important. This is back to recently when we covered storms, right? We went back and showed the presentation that CCP Rise did about what they were thinking in CCP when it comes to storms. They have many, many things that are going to shake things up in the pipe, potentially. Things like biomes, so local climate, so to speak, is also on the table. So all of these things will shake things up and make proper incentives to have an interest in what's going on in different types of space. What price developments will happen on almost everything, because it's going to be so closely tied to what's going on in that space.
True, but a lot of nullsec, like the nullsecs that have to, if they want to go through JITA, either they have to go through a Mars space, or they have to find a way to use other nullsecs to get there. So there is a that's probably the main reason why different nullsec entities have taken an interest in the system of Niarja, because it massively applies and impacts their logistical supply chain, both in and out of their systems of null.
Well, Tilda is asking whether I think that high-seckers will have an interest in what's going on in null if these changes come in. And I can only speak for the money people in the market class. And to them, they would definitely start showing an interest, because things happening in null could hurt their bottom line. And that makes it really, really important. It's the same with what has been happening with the whole Plex and offshoring stuff. You just have to show an interest. This was what brought null's interest into high-sec, and it's going to go the other way if you start seeing things like, well, if a specific region gets hurt or invaded by, well, let's say non-crabbers, the explosive price rise in, say, Maccloud would not be something that's tolerable. That means that market people might actually benefit from either supporting one or the other side in such a war. So I just think that we could see a shakeup of the meta that has never ever been seen in EVE, not even back in what I call the good days.
I mean, it's also pretty true that those changes might not be symmetric, right? Like, if you cut off the south from JITA, then maybe alliances like Brave, who are sitting in the south mostly, are differently affected as those that are in the northern region, and you don't need to pass through Niarja to reach Dita, right?
Well, I jokingly said that if I was involved in the big guy stuff, I think I would actually say that the Imperium would have to go in and take Amar and create their trade hub in there right now, because that creates a natural competitor, of course, in a completely different market, but still, it might actually be exactly the kind of competition that's needed, and the whole splitting up of high-sec would change, and there would be a shake-up, and competition would be different. There would most likely still be some sort of collusion or cartel formation, but it would still make it very, very different than what we have right now.
It has a massive impact, especially if you also look at newer players, because currently it doesn't really matter that much with what race you begin, because you are still able to move relatively quickly between the different empires and set up shop where you are more comfortable. And as a new player, you'll tend to stay to the more secure routes, meaning that everything is a 0.5 or higher. So if Niarja falls with that, you're really creating a big difference where the accessibility to the entirety of the empires and nullsec has a massive impact. And this could also impact player retention if they see like, hey, I have to fly 40 jumps every time I want to go from this place to that place just because I picked this character, or just because I ended up here. This sucks, you know what, I'm out, or people that just find other ways around it. So the implications are massive.
Well, just to answer a little bit what Always Out of Mana is pointing out, I think my argument is that if there is a difference between the different areas in high-sec, and it's not this flat, the asymmetry and the price differences that was mentioned, if that emerges from this, it's actually really healthy, because it means that there's also incentive to do stuff in different regions instead of this almost flat-like thing that I think high-sec has suffered from in many years.
It's a bit of a thing, because in the early days, certain ores could only be found in certain empires. So that already created the part where certain things were plentiful available, but there was a shortage of others. And in other parts of New Eden, it was the other way around. So that kind of difference between the different parts, that's a good thing. Yet at the same time, the availability to it, in this case with relatively safe travels, because the moment you induct suicide ganking is a thing, as soon as you start messing with that, it could have a big negative impact on how people enjoy the game.
I see Billy has just joined us. Do you want to give us your 2 cents?
Hey, Billy.
Hello.
So, what's going on?
Much. Looks like you got an interesting day happening, to say the least.
Just a little bit.
Last night.
Please let Niarja burn, please.
At the moment, as far as I'm tracking, we're busy. I know some guys are getting involved on both sides, but that's kind of a personal choice for right now, as far as I'm tracking with most of our dudes. So.
Are you pro Niarja falling or anti Niarja falling, personally, Billy?
I haven't really seen a significant reason that either is really going to change a ton, but we'll see. Even if Niarja went low sec, I don't know how much that's going to change things, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, I imagine the majority of TTT's trading kind of like profitability comes from something that doesn't really require that much movement, like to and from different trades, like different trade markets, right?
Scale. What you're looking at is a situation where all of a sudden you could see maybe a little bit more of a regional divide, which might be a slight drop for us, but in the end, the Amar market will pick up most of that, and I don't know. On a personal level, I'd be kind of curious to see how the game would develop if there was actually 2 competing markets again for a change instead of just one.
Well, as I've already explained, I'm a big fan of the fact that players can actually make an impact on space, and even if it has little impact, as really is kind of hinting at, I still think it's a massive move in a direction that makes the game more dynamic and a lot more entertaining to play.
I think, I mean, part of that is, well, I mean, the majority of that, I think, Caleb, is sort of player agency, right?
Yeah, exactly. And this is back to, well, before Willy took over HiSec, there was quite a lot of activity and people involved in some very interesting shenanigans of running structures in HiSec. That's been punched a little bit. But these people were people that are not necessarily null-centric, but are still like, well, I'm not going to say they're like the casino war people, but they do have a tendency of involving themselves in different groups and different scenarios and activities in a way that's not as as null-sec politics-centric. And I think that's healthy to have this wild card in play. And I think more of these things will bring those things back.
I mean, if you talk about the Triglavian Initiative, for example, that's the bigger group I'm involved with. We are not a homogeneous group, right? People have different reasons to support the Triglavian Collective and fight against Edencom. I think our smallest common denominator is like, we think Edencom is, roughly speaking, pro-status quo, right? And the Triglavians are a group of people who want a bit of change, a bit of disruption, and a fresh wind.
Well, I'm kind of hinting at some different types of people and not necessarily groups. But again, this is something that requires a bit of a diatribe. So I'm going to leave it.
Aww.
Okay, the short, too long, didn't read.
Okay, quick.
I've been running in the money dude circles since day one in this game, and yes, I've been outcompeted by some null entities because, well, bigger, more people, natural development. But anyways, a lot of the very rich individuals in EVE are still in these back rooms, and they have a very long history in EVE Online. And way back, I created a little bit of a group because there were some shenanigans going on, and this is kind of where many of these rich folk talk today. And we are also tied into all the other people like nullsec entities because we all have our bias. I think no one is surprised that I'm a bit of a goonsplainer and I like dealing with goons. So there's always these things going on behind the scenes. This is also some of the stories that's come out with big scams, bank scams, all of these things. This is kind of the group that I run with, and they lost a lot of influence because of some changes from CCP. And I think many of these changes that we're seeing now can actually bring some of that back.
Yeah. Like, you know, I mean, obviously, well, that's the thing. Like, you know, well, what's the phrase? Like, don't waste a good.
Never let a good crisis go to waste.
That's the one. That is the one. You know, and in crisis, in a situation, in a crisis situation, there's always opportunity, right? So, you know, in my view, you know, sort of breaking the monotony, breaking up the status quo is kind of good for the game. Strange parallels with some other thing that's going on in New Eden at the moment, but yeah.
Well, it's just funny because, of course, I can go down this horrible nostalgia lane and talk about the good old days, and but it's just I thought it was really funny back when these kind of organizations and individuals could grow and become influential, and then eventually upgrade themselves into being at least part, directly or indirectly, in nullsec politics, and I think many of them eventually grew into being part of nullsec. I can name drop like the former Goon Cabal member Minna that also ended up on the CSM, who also dipped his toes a lot with the groups that I play with. And I just think it's funny when there's this chaos thing. I like the fact that the casino money funded World War B won, even though it's named the Casino War. But I think that was a nice little joker that entered the game and actually created a lot of content for people. Of course, I'm sad that it kind of pushed Goons into a little bit of a hole, but that's a different story.
I mean, the thing is, like, adversity does breed sort of, like a lot of good kind of strong relationships as well. So, like, just because a group's in a sticky situation isn't always a negative thing.
But it's just that, as I think I mentioned a little bit when we had Killer on, even though a lot of EVE always changes, that's the nature of the game, right? A lot of the bigger things and the upper echelons or the very dedicated players that's been around for ages still always have a finger in the pot. And that means that what I call meta politics and all that shenanigans is always like a massively important aspect of everything that goes on in EVE. I know that most people don't follow that and don't think it's that interesting, but it's kind of why I'm sticking around, because there's just so much drama from that, whether it's weird shenanigan talks at the CSM. I think we've covered quite a few of those stories, right? The embrace of the judge. There's always something happening when it comes to hookups and relationships of the real people, right? Meeting fellow goons in London, or getting drunk in Amsterdam, or getting smacked in Iceland. There's just everyone is always involved with people, and that brings both friendships and animosity, and this is the drama in EVE, to me.
And I kind of like the fact that, like, this is, this kind of stuff is happening in sort of high sec rather than just in null sec at this particular time. Like, it's kind of an interesting sort of thing, because all of the drama, all of the intrigue, all of the kind of interesting stuff, like, has always, or for the most part, been in nullsec, and it's kind of interesting to have this kind of little, like, this change of sort of scene in that regard, with all the Triglavian stuff, and especially this, what's happening in Niarja now, because as Vinny has pointed out, like, maybe the change to Niarja isn't going to affect that much stuff that's happening, change much that happens in nullsec, when nullsec kind of regards like stuff that's happening in highsec, but like it does affect highsec, people who live in highsec, like fairly significantly. So
I mean, it's also cumulative effect, especially in Caldari space. If we talk about that, like Caldari have lost, I think now 23 systems to Triglavians, like 9 or so final liminalities, and another 12 or 13 in minor victories for the Triglavians. So it makes Caldari space as a whole less attractive and more dangerous, or more attractive if you are someone who's more into hunting and PvP, right? So that's 5%, more than 5% of the systems in those regions. And like some of those had the big ice belts for Caldari ice in them. So while none of these systems were very important and impactful by themselves, that has knock-on effects, and it stacks up.
I'm just going to ask a question to anyone that actually understands this whole invasion thing, because I know about it and I know how it generally works, but I don't know the details. Because this thing, if it falls, it goes into fake nullsec. I understand that, but
no, not yet.
It hasn't fallen yet. I'm saying if it does, it will go into fake nullsec mode. I'm just going to ask: is the opposite also true? Is winning a potentially upgrade or a fake highsec thing?
No.
Because, that's a little bit sad, right? Because that needed to be the flip side. So say if something like Niarja or Uedama was won by the Eden Comet, it should actually be upgraded to be safer than it was before, right?
True. Basically, things can only get worse. This is something that definitely plays a big part in the burnout for the Edencom side, because people have to put in a lot of effort, a lot of time, and they only keep things they are. Like if they keep a null-sec system, it doesn't become high-sec, and high-sec can become low-sec and null-sec. So with that regard, things are a bit slated. Things that don't help right now is that there still is an imbalance between different empires. In the past, Amar was really good at fighting the Triglavians. That has been tuned down more to the level of Galente and Minmatar, where it's about equal strength. But the Kaldari had the issue that they are just unable to properly apply any damage to the Triglavians. So that meant that in the previous state, because there was a patch that fixed it, you had Amar that were stronger and Kaldari that were weaker, and now you just have the Kaldari that are weaker, even though they had a small buff in survivability, but they still can't apply their damage. There's cases where fleets are even unable to kill a single Triglavian frigate. So with that in mind, it's an extreme uphill struggle in an attempt to keep Kaldari systems from falling into a minor victory or eventually a final liminality. Because even if you have people running the sites, going after the roaming fleets, you can't be everywhere at the same time. So even if you put in everything you can, there's still been cases that despite all of that, systems are still sliding down in Kaldari space.
All of the NPC missiles on the invasion NPCs were not designed well enough to do notable damage. That applies to players and NPCs. They don't hit players very hard either. They've received a couple of buffs here and there, but it's not enough. The buff that was notable to the Kaldari NPCs in the recent change.
Yeah, the missile application issue is a group that I fly with use that to make a lot of ISK.
Yeah, they got 40% EM resist in their shields where they had 0 before. So they're able to hold their own against Triglavian missiles, which are 50-50 EM and kinetic. So that was what was destroying them before, and they don't get quite as destroyed, but their missiles still have application issues.
So that's a big issue, and that's why there's also been such a big discrepancy between the different empire systems, and why the Kaldari state in particular suffers so many systems, either in a minor victory for the Triglavians or final liminality.
This is also the same reason why in the previous chapter, there were groups that were farming the Flashpoint, the Dreadnought sites.
Yeah,
they would go to the Kaldari ones, which have the Kaldari NPCs that fire missiles. The Dreadnought that shows up is a Phoenix that fired rapid heavies. Rapid torps. And because these missiles did not apply very well, they were able to do them in destroyers and frigates. So they brought destroyers for damage, and they brought Tech 2 logistics frigates for the reps. And
we tried running that yesterday, and it did not go very well.
Yeah, so these were able
to in Chapter 2, and that's the main reason why ARC just generally didn't deploy to Kaldari, because it was just unbeatable if you try to run a Flashpoint for Edencom, because they could take bomber fleets in and speed and sick tank most of the damage as long as you prioritize killing things in the right order. So that's the part where that was undoable in any other empire or against the Triglavians. So that's the part where Kaldari definitely suffered and still suffers. However, on the upside, and this is a bit of a bridge or gap closer, if Niarja is hitting 100% Kaldari, 100% Triglavian, that means that the system flips to first liminality, and then if it pushed all the way, that's when it hits final liminality. But just because the system goes first liminality doesn't mean that the system is lost. In the system of Arshat, it wasn't a Mars system, but this was after the change, so that doesn't diminish the achievement any less. The system was pushed from hitting first liminality to a redoubt, so it was flipped back and even pushed all the way to a strong point. So just because it goes one way doesn't mean that the outcome is set.
Yes, that was certainly an Edencom achievement. I have to acknowledge that. I have put a flowchart of the different invasion states into the chat. If you want to put it on screen, then we can probably discuss it a bit easier.
Yep.
Your optimism is cute. That system is going nullsec.
I mean, I am very much for pushing Niarja all the way, right? But just for the viewers to see it better.
There we go. It's up on screen now.
It's covered on the stream. There it is.
Exactly. So that's basically the flowchart of how an invasion system works. It spawns and it enters a stellar reconnaissance, and that's the bar we are currently in Niarja. And there are 3 ways a stellar reconnaissance ends. Either it times out after around 3 days. There's a little bit of randomness involved with that. Then it despawns and it just goes back to normal. If one of the 2 sides hits 100%, it goes into a decision if it is a liminal candidate. And in Niarja's case, it's yes, because it's depending on star type. And if you have the star type as blue A0, for example, which Niarja is, it will always escalate. So it will never go to a minor victory. And then you have also in the agency, if you look, these escalation stage where it's slanted into one direction. If it's for Edencom, it's a redoubts and bulwarks phase. And for Triggs, it's an escalating liminality. At that point, it can never time out again. So it will always be fought for until it is either a final liminality or a fortress. And it will reset the bar to 50-50. And if, for example, it's an escalating liminality and Edencom manages to put it to 0% or more than 75% their way after 48 hours, then it will flip over to 50 and be an Edencom redoubt. And the same the other way around. And once the leading side, it's like a tennis match in the end, right? If it's a draw, then you play until someone wins 2 times in a row. And once the side that is dominant hits 100%, it gets locked into their respective end state. And once it is locked into the end state, it will be transposed onto the other server, which is the gray boxes on the outsides. But that's basically the full flowchart of how it works.
How are they allowing actions on Serenity or Tranquility to affect the other? That doesn't seem quite right. That there could be a fight going down. So if on Serenity they fight over a system that hasn't been fought over on Tranquility, it goes one way or the other, and then that state is then mirrored over to Tranquility, where it was never fought over,
and vice versa.
Exactly.
That's not okay.
But it's how it works. We have 14 massive fortifications on Tranquility, which were all fought for on Serenity, and Serenity is very pro Edencom as a server. So the 14 fortresses I built were transposed onto Tranquility. And the way it works is that instead of spawning as stellar reconnaissance, as a system does, it spawns first on Tranquility. It spawns as a so-called massive fortification. Or if it's a trick victory on another server, it spawns as a massive invasion. It has sides, but it doesn't have the control bar, so to speak. It's just a timer. And after 3 days under massive invasion or massive fortification, it just flips into the respective end state, which is a mirror of the other server. Like, for example, if Niarja were to become a final liminality on Tranquility, if the Triglavians win, then on Serenity it would become a massive invasion followed by also a final liminality.
Yeah, can we all, like, everybody gets why I have an issue with this, right? Like, that's not unclear, is it?
No,
I can completely relate. I understand. I mean, it's the part where you don't have any influence, and things are having radical changes where you have no way of stopping it just because it's happening on the other server. I mean, for example,
that's exactly my issue with this.
If Niarja falls on Tranquility, then all of a sudden, Serenity, that has no influence, that didn't have that invasion, could end up with Niarja no longer being available to them because it became final liminality and they had no input, or they could do. There's nothing that they could have done to change that. And for the same thing goes with everything that's happening on Serenity, also happens on Tranquility, which is why you have so many massive fortifications.
On the bright side, though, Serenity, I've been looking at EVE Offline. Serenity only has like 8,000 players usually, so they probably don't have as much of an ability to affect versus.
Let's just it's size of player group versus size of player group. So if their whole pool is smaller, they could still be like all Edencom.
And also remember that the PCU of Serenity is still higher than EVE Online was the first 2 years of the game, right? So it's really not that bad considering that they just reopened. It still has a lot of room to grow considering that it's just been approved and allowed to run in China again.
Yeah, I mean, if three dudes played on Serenity and two of them played for the Trigs and one of them played for Edencom, then everything would go Trig.
Basically, well, probably more 20 to 10 or something, but yeah. We have to say CCPs themselves have never confirmed this connection, right? They never stated what massive invasions and massive fortifications are, so I feel a little bit encouraged to just state it's just a very, very well observed theory, right? Like, there's no confirmation, but every single system that has gone massive on one of the servers was first conquered on the other and then transposed. I mean, there's a lot of speculation why CCP does it, and at least for the Triglavian side, it does have some positive inclinations to think about it in the way that if they want to synchronize the servers, it means they probably want to have permanence for these changes, and B, those changes are probably so big that they can't be just made with the tail systems that they use to do the invasions and stuff, but will have to be in the code itself. So we hope we see this as hints that we will see pretty big changes to the invasion outcome systems.
Yeah, if it is shown to be the case, to be factual, that this mirroring between Serenity and Tranquility is happening, then I am extremely displeased with that decision.
So at the moment, we're just, if you're wondering where we are on the stream right now, I'm actually looking at the Maccloud gate in Niarja. So yeah, this is where some people just streaming into the system or just going their usual kind of thing, just running into Triglavians, and we almost had a Dominic's die, getting to the gate. There's been, obviously you can see that there's a whole bunch of wrecks on the gate from various different capsuleers that either have fought on the gate or have gone through and then basically got schwacked on the gate. by Triglavians.
Or it could be that it's been Triglavian forces getting whacked by players, or Edencom forces getting whacked by players, or Edencom and Triglavians whacking each other over the head.
Yeah, all sorts. We seem to have a fleet coming in here, probably to mow up the Triglavians that are here.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at .lan, we can see that Niarja had in the last, it's up for 12 hours as an invasion by now, or a little bit more, like 14, 15 or something, I think. And we have already nearly 30k NPC kills in the system in the last 24 hours. Like it stands out a big lot.
Can I jump in?
Oh yeah, for sure, dude.
Have you seen that the patch notes are out? Hello, by the way. The
patch notes we were going to come on to that. So there is an additional thing. There's an additional thing that's basically that's happening Triglavian related, and that's essentially basically a kind of a balance pass on Triglavian ships and weapon systems. Let me just grab that and put that up on the stream.
Is that a devlog or a patch notes or what?
It's kind of it's on the forum, so it's kind of like patch notes. Yes. So let me just chuck that up.
That explains why I'm just hearing about it now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So they CCP came out with basically.
Also, please.
Oh yeah. Give me a second.
CCP
came out. So basically, CCP came out with this Dread Collective new update saying that they're going to basically do changes to the Triglavian ships, but they didn't say what. But only very recently, there was a new post up on the Evo forums by CCP Dopamine, where it's actually they've given some stats as to what they're doing.
Draugr got a massive buff. Holy smokes!
The Leshak mass issue. I wonder how wormholers are going to adjust to that.
You're all missing out, guys. You're all missing it. The Zenitra.
Hold it for a sec. Maybe just let Funsui read it through and then do the comment on it.
Oh, okay, I can run it down.
Yeah. Go for it.
Matt.
Go for it.
Matt.
No. Sure. You got the better speaking voice.
Right. So first up, Zenitra increased base damage on all XL Triglavian ammo by 150%. So that's a massive, massive buff to the Dreadnought ammo. So the Dreadnought was designed kind of overpowered, and then it was released and everything, but before players were able to make it, and CCP knows how long it takes players to make it, it was changed and nerfed and made extremely bad. A lot of people were very upset about that. So this change hopefully will put it back into play and make it get used.
Wasn't it that the details? Was it that the details on the?
Yeah, I'll read.
Read through.
Yeah, I'm gonna burn through. So Kikimora mass increase from 1,350,000 to 1,560,000. Kikimora is known for its agility and speed. This will impact that. The Draugr bonus to optimal range was doubled from 15% to 30% per level. Its range was a notable issue with it, and the max velocity was increased. It was also rather slow, so these changes are very large buffs to the Draugr. Leshak mass increase 63 mil to 78 mil. This is a very large change because Leshak is extremely popular in wormholes due to its low mass. I mean, other reasons as well, but that's one particular reason. Max velocity increase, that's a small buff. Drekavac, drone bay reduced from 125 to 75. So the drone bay, you can't. It's a lot easier to defang a Drek. It can't carry quite as many tools with it. Drone bandwidth reduced from 75 to 50. So that's actually a huge difference as well. And the mass was increased on that. So that's just multiple nerf bat hits to the Drekavac. Vedmak, 5% bonus to Entropic Disintegrator changed to 7.5% bonus. Optimal. Okay, so it had 25% tracking. Now it has 37.5% optimal range on the Vedmak, which is actually, I would say, a buff in the end.
Oh, for sure.
So, the big spoiler: Zenitra is now the strongest dread in the game of all the dreads.
Yeah, that's a huge. So when they say by 150%,
times 2.5.
Exactly. So now whatever it was doing before, it does 2.5 times that. They added 150%.
It now does 19.6 thousand DPS base.
Take us through what that also means.
And it peaks at 69,000 DPS, volleying 420,000 damage.
That's not correct.
Well, that's assuming it's 150%. That is what a fit that I use.
150 is 1.5.
No, but it was increased.
It says 150%.
Increased, yeah, the language is clear. Increased
is it 2 or by
150%?
The actual things are supposed to be. So I don't know what it's on the test server right now, but it's not that insane.
I think it's test server.
Yeah, I think it's just maybe the the wordage used. Like maybe it's 250%, not by 150%.
Well, yeah, I mean,
but they use by
based on what it says. On what it says, it now does 2.5 times what it did before. So if that language is wrong, that language is wrong. But that's what the language says.
Yeah. I mean, it hasn't CCP has screwed up on language, when sort of doing these sorts of things before. So it's not
I'm loading up Singularity right now.
Yeah. I mean, you can. You'll be able to let us know, ASAP. Cable probably is as well. Wondering, but yeah, I mean, CCP has fucked up a little bit sometimes, when it comes to wording on things like this before. But more often than not, they haven't. So they.
I mean, if it's 50%, then it's still good.
It's still good, even if it's 150% rather than by 100%. But even so, it still makes Zenithra's great.
It's not on the test server.
The change isn't live right now.
It says on the dev blog that it would be live, but it's not. It's really sad.
Let's see.
What does it mean in general, Billy? Would you take us through your opinion on it?
The Triglavian patch?
Yeah.
As far as I'm tracking, it's not actually on the test server yet.
Yeah, and the last update to Singularity was 3 days, 5 hours ago.
So my knowledge is still technically NDA, unfortunately.
But if
I mean, you can talk about what they posted on the forums, right?
Well, Paradox is actually in chat. Paradox is actually in chat, and he says 2.5 times is correct. The wording is correct. So it's
in that case, yes, because Zenithra is now the fucking master damage of all dreads.
Jesus.
I obviously
that
Billy,
volley.
The fit that I was referring to, Billy, is with high grade Mimesis and officer mods.
Oh, sure.
But still,
it's a theoretical, maximum.
No, it's not a theoretical. It's an actual number. That is what I have fit.
All right.
Well, okay,
So if we're gonna go with exactly 2.5 times, then I can just fire up Python and see what is underneath.
I'm telling you what it's going to be.
I believe you, but I like to fiddle,
I mean, I can.
Well,
show
I mean,
you
you've said the numbers. I might as well just throw up that little kind of.
I'll post it. I'll post a full picture of the fitting. I'll post you the fitting, then.
And still,
it'll show everything.
That's a bling fit, right, Cable? That's not what most people are going to fly.
It's fine, whatever.
Yeah, you're okay with me showing up.
It's all good. That's all good.
All right.
Throw it up there.
Well, people can't afford your bling fits, Cable, right?
Just because it's obscene.
People can.
Just because it's absolutely obscene.
I could still abyssal the ratsing,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Make it worse.
I'm just throwing this together. Yeah, that looks about right.
That volley is just goddamn.
So what are you using? 3 rad sinks?
4.
All right, yeah, that's what I figured. So yeah, if you throw in high grade mimesis, RF906, 4 officer rad sinks, and max skills, that's and I guess pyro. So let's throw in.
Yeah, pyro 4 and 6% rate of fire.
Yeah, 906.
I mean,
so,
then if you abyssal the rat sinks, you're going to get over 80, almost 80 or more.
Right. So
So but that's a lot of other dreadnoughts you can field for the same amount of.
I gotta put
of
in.
Course.
Of course.
For my purpose, it's totally worth it.
All right, so at zero spool, we're getting that config is getting 7,874. So if we multiply that by 2.5, then we get a little crazy.
Yeah, I can reach just under 80k with decent rolls of missiles.
Yeah,
boy.
so that's 19,685 at zero spool. That's a volley of.
I mean,
it's a volley of 100 and.
You can damage cap a Keep Star or a Sotio with a single of these. Just saying.
Yeah, it's.
Oh
it's
boy!
So when we spool it all the way up, that takes 328 seconds. 328 seconds, but we're doing.
I mean, you're still starting at 22,000 DPS with 5 syncs. Sorry.
Yeah, that's 69, 70, 80. So what did you do to display 2.5 times? You just gave it a buff somehow.
Just add in Python, just in the global at the top left corner, put global attribute overrides, and then just rewrite it and add the numbers.
Yep.
Like, holy cow, this is gonna be bananas, dude.
I'm curious, really, is something like this change going to have any effect on the war, or is it too niche?
That's Nitra.
It's way too expensive to be used in any scale.
It'll never be used in a Dread Bomb. Well, I'm not going to say never, but like...
unlikely.
What about the rest of the changes? Are they going to shake up any changes in the current meta?
There's basically 0 trig ships used in any doctrine in null anyways.
Draugr is going to be like the new Kiki on steroids. You have T2 resist and it's now faster.
Yeah, it's faster and has the range.
And
you can
5
fit
times the cost.
Yeah, but you can also fit a couple of them with what's it called? An MJD, and then you just moonwalk your entire fleet out.
You could do that already.
Sure, but it wasn't able to actually do anything, and it's going to be hard to figure out which one is actually the one MJDing when there's 50 of them or more.
Which one? All of them.
Exactly. Oh boy. I'm excited now. I'm actually excited.
I'd just like to say thank you very much to Paradox for coming on here and giving us the confirmation, by the way.
Yeah, that was really nice. That was
dope. Yeah, that was a very
dope.
handy confirmation.
Can we also give a little bit of a shout out to the fact that they made the most crisp little upgrade to their overlay on the Trig invasion thing?
Well, is that still going on? Because we might actually.
It's still being streamed on CCP, so you can still follow it. And they just did a massive little nice upgrade. I think they stole one of your ideas on the logo.
That's fine.
That looks very much like something that I've seen Maccloud do for TIS. Just saying. So send some Iskies this way, CCP, in royalties, or to Maccloud at least.
No, I'm not going to hold them to that. Like, Jesus Christ.
There is one thing you have to then consider, and this is going to shift wormhole meta significantly. Because
the Shack mass thing
it's literally going to be Zenitra's online.
I don't think the Zenitra change will be as important as the Lashak mass change for the wormhole meta.
Say goodbye to your hero like Vaxes.
The Drek mass changed as well, but the Vedmak got significant upgrades.
The Drekavac mass change is substantial, but it's not nearly as important, I don't think, as for Lashak's.
The drone change to the Drekavac is significant, though.
The Drek got a huge nerf bad hit, across the board.
Because that only means 2. Like you can't. Yeah, you can only run 2 heavies on that bandwidth as well, because you're getting a bandwidth reduction as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hyped right now, very much. Because, like, Jesus Christ, what are you gonna do? Like, how are you gonna like do anything other than these Zenitras in wormhole space? Because like one Zenitra and just like, oh well, I guess my fax is dead in a minute or two.
Yeah, exactly. Like your hero faxes that come in to save a fleet is just gonna get like eviscerated by one of these.
So at zero,
They do not
zero
do the damage Cable is talking about unless they
Paradox just confirmed that it is 150% increase, so that is the base
the math
ammo
you're doing
number.
doesn't work.
No, I don't know. I just confirmed those exact numbers. Like that's 2.5 times what it does now.
Obviously, Villy, like obviously, like Cable's kind of variation is not what everyone's going to be running.
No, I just went and looked at like the thing, and like Mimesis is what, like 50% increase?
Here, I'll shut off the Mimesis actually.
No, but so I mean,
so we're doing
with no drugs, no implants, and no radiation sinks whatsoever. The Zenitra is going to spool to a maximum of 23,000 DPS with Tetrion.
Yeah, that's about right.
23,035 DPS.
23035.
Maybe things have changed, but I would wait until something's actually on the test server before going crazy speculating, much like last time with the Zenitra.
I mean, Paradox confirmed in stream chat that it is an increase of 150%.
So it is always wise to wait to see, on the test server and on live. However, considering that this is just one attribute change specifically, then I think that it's safe to assume,
Maybe he's screaming across the room to the other devs. Cable is saying this is completely horrible. Are we sure that it's going to be too much time?
You never know.
I can just see that. Are we sure these were the numbers we were agreeing on? It sounds as if it's wrong because Cable is screaming like a little baby.
I mean,
just
honestly,
an ice cream.
I'm honestly, if you go like super bananas with Did Abyssal and then you heated it, it almost peaks at 100,000 DPS with 500,000 volleys. I'm just saying this might be too much.
So I'm gonna do this a different way. So what I did in Python to simulate this change was I went to the Ultra Tidal Entropic Disintegrator 1, and I changed its base damage multiplier from 1 to 2.5. So I'm gonna undo that change. And I'm going to change the ammo directly because
I already did that. That's
what's been changed is
what I did.
Yeah. So I just wanted to. I'm double checking that it does the exact same thing both ways.
It does. You want to change the explosive damage to 1330 and the thermal to 3010.
Yeah, I'm changing all three ammos, but yes, that is what I'm doing now.
This is going to be actually funny. Like, holy cow. I'm just saying Misan from 117 kilometers away. What's it called? Spools to 6,500 DPS with no rad sinks whatsoever and no drugs, no implants. From 117 kilometers away.
Now, even though Billy said that stuff like this doesn't really hit the doctrine meta for war purposes and also activity, I'm still kind of curious. Are these things getting close to, well, at least having some sort of viability and potential for being actually used? Well, maybe in something like structure stuff because of the ramp up. That means that it's effectively a growing thing when it shoots, right?
Always going to be the strongest thing. Like for anything, the problem is the Zenitra was never good for anything other than what's it called, extra large structures, because all the other structures would be limited by damage cap.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking trick ships in general.
Yeah, they already get used.
All the weapons do this, right?
They already get used for structures. It's just that for the size of fleet numbers that big null blocks get, these aren't really optimal because the ramping damage means that
you need to sit there for a certain while before it's actually viable compared to any other dread.
And because if you're flying a Drekovac doctrine, for example, you're going to reach alpha before you ramp up to long before you ramp up to peak damage.
Yeah, I'm just thinking with situations like what we had in Y-2, where the damage on the structure was actually lost, right? We don't need to go into the details, but I'm just thinking that this whole Triglavian weapon system is kind of interesting in general, not necessarily on the scale and cost of the Sinistra, but in general, these weapons are interesting because they kind of ramp up, and that means that you will have to take out more and more of the fleet if it's actually using that to apply damage.
Yeah, Y-2, the circumstances were really different because, well, at first the test Raven fleet was pausing the timer, and then Boat's bomber fleet took them out, and the only other people who were in range to shoot the Keepstar were the two Boosh Raven fleets from Waffles and Capital Fusion. I was in the Waffles fleet, and we weren't doing enough damage to pause the timer because we didn't have the numbers. So, and ramping damage wouldn't really make a difference because the Keepstar Doomsday would meant that we would have to boosh off and then ramp up from base again. And actually, our fleets died because time dilation meant that we didn't see the Keepstar Doomsday animation until it was ready to go.
I mean, I'm just saying that, like, yeah, it wouldn't be viable, for example, in nullsec, but like, I mean, I'm just saying maybe something like this would be a viable thing in ISEC against a.
That's interesting.
Just saying. I'm just putting it out there.
But still, right? We saw, of course, a perfect bombing run, right? But again, theoretically, if this had been something like the weapon system of Triglavians, right, then a less effective or less perfect bomb run on a fleet consisting of these things would have meant that the timer would not have started again, right?
Yep.
It's just because, I could, of course, be completely wrong, because bombing is a little bit of a mystery art in my book, at least to me. But as far as I'm informed, getting perfect bomb runs like that is not really what you get every time. It's like, if you get half the fleet, that's a lot more likely than pretty much almost wiping it completely off the board, right? I don't know if there's any bomb experts in the room, but of course, if you get like a very experienced one like Boat and a master FC like Sister Bliss doing these things, I'm just saying that I don't think that's necessarily what normal would look like.
It's not normal, but then again, like, bombing runs have kind of become not really the sort of like a viable thing for quite some time. Like, with the type of doctrines that are being had been being used in nullsec, like they were, they're quite highly bomb resistant.
Hacks. If you want to bomb hacks, you're going to use void bombs.
Yeah, you need to throw the two void bombs into the mix, with the 8 damage bombs. A lot of people think that you have to run like a separate void bomb, bomber group or like squad. That's not really the case. Like, you can actually use void bombs in the same squad as regular bombs, because the void bombs actually have a shorter fuse. They blow up before the regular bombs, so you don't technically have issues of regular bombs taking out void bombs, if so long as the void bombs and the regular bombs are thrown at basically the same time, they should be fine.
I'm just interested in this because I love Eve Wars, and I know that historically the doctrines and the meta has not changed that much during a war, but lately a lot of changed in from what I can see, and there's a lot of potential change coming, right? So this whole skunkworks R&D is almost something that is, well, if not required, it might at least give that extra edge. So there might be more tinkering going on that we might end up seeing in this war, right? That we've not really seen before. I think, Maccloud, you said that numbers have been crunched and there are potentially things that could be fielded. It just might not necessarily get to actually be fielded in this war. But if it's a prolonged one, don't you think things will change up a lot?
Well, the longer it goes, the more opportunity people have to try out interesting and new situations, right? So, yeah, basically, the longer this war goes on, the more interesting and unique ideas are both tried, tested to see whether they work or whether they don't. And, people have, necessity is the mother of invention, right? So, the reason why Initiative came up with, the craziness that is, the Raven boost fleet was out of necessity, right? So you never know, when the rubber hits the road and necessity requires it, what will actually be created out of that.
And when price efficiency reaches some point, right? Because, well, I remember Maccarials being fleeted, like, to the level where it was something that I was face palming at, right? And everyone and their mother was producing Maccarials, and that was like the flavor of the month. And I was looking at the new Vortron thing, the new chain weapon, and those prices are getting down there, right? They're dropping down to almost below the other comparable faction hulls in the same family, right? So I'm just thinking that weapon is a highly interesting one, if that might actually end up being used in the war. I know that it might not be at all fitted in any of the current doctrines on paper, but it's one of those things that has come in recently. We don't really know its exact viability and effectiveness when on the field. Of course, there's been experiments and stuff, but I'm just thinking, if it reaches the right price tag, maybe it's something that's viable for strategic positioning, and maybe even in a suicidal kind of strategy, right?
No, it's really not very good.
You think?
Well, it's very close to something that I would call a suicide ship. The fact that it does that jumping thing and it stacks, right? That means that if the same target is hit by, or the adjacent target is hit by one in the fleet, you get all this spillover. So it's applying damage in a way that's a lot more interesting and chaotic, and might actually be beneficial in a fight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, either way, I think I'm not entirely certain. Is there any other news of the day that we need to kind of discuss? Because I think we've kind of Providence. What's going on, Providence?
Well, does anyone else know what's going on? Is Spot in here right now?
No.
So I guess it's just me. Well, what's basically happened is that Wrecking Crew has decided that since the ceasefire, the non-invasion pact was with a coalition that no longer exists, the non-invasion pact is expired this morning at downtime.
Ooh, okay. So everything's being invaded.
The 9UI Keepstar, which was CVA's, is now belongs to Severance, which is blue with RC for war reasons, since they're part of Legacy.
Okay.
Wrecking Crew is not going to be touching the outpost Fortizar in 9UI because it's a piece of history. But but since the coalition, which lived in Providence, it no longer exists, its stuff is going to be free targets from now on, and no longer protected by a non-invasion pact.
So how many have we seen some sub-wanding stuff going on right now, or okay, I imagine there's been a fair amount of sub-wanding going on, or sort of starting to happen at least, right? If the non-invasion pact is up.
I would assume so, but I can't really say for sure since I've been more focused on what's going on in Fountain recently.
Mm-hmm. No, that's understandable. So we do have a fair number of timers up for Providence up on the timerboard.net. So
holy smokes!
This is going to be just a few, just a tiny amount. TCU's iHubs, all the jazz. So Providence is definitely heating up like considerably, and that SOV is going to probably start changing hands fairly rapidly. Stuff obviously starting to happen.
It's basically a cleanup since most of the people who lived there evacuated. It's mainly to clean up what they left behind.
Oh, okay.
Who are you saying that's moving in?
I'm not sure if anyone's moving in, but Wrecking Crew is clearing it out for. I don't think I can say what RC's plans are right now, but it's going to be cleared out for the next group of people to move in now that Provi Block has evacuated.
Okay. So, who do you think is going to be taking that particular kind of solve? Like, do you think it's just going to be fallow land almost, or do you think someone's going to grab it just for the sake of grabbing?
I know that a couple of groups had joined Wrecking Crew because they wanted to get started in the SOV game, like Hardly Competent. They're one example. They lived in low-sec domain, and then they joined RC to get started on SOV, and maybe more groups will look to Providence as a way to get started as a SOV alliance before moving elsewhere.
Okay.
Because Providence is, with the TrueSec and the location, not really a great region to live.
Yeah, you really need to build it up. Like Providence built it up for a long period of time. Like, sorry, not Providence. Like Provi Block kind of built it up, and CVA kind of built it up quite a lot for it to be sort of somewhat okay space. But with all of it basically being dumpstered and kind of like removed, and them kind of like leaving the scene, it needs to be built up again for it to be kind of viable for someone to live. As far as I know, anyway. Like,
yeah, and the ADMs are all going to reset to 0, so that's going to take some time to get it back to a decent crabbing space.
Yeah, exactly. But other than that, like anything else going on, like Providence wise, or just generally that we need to discuss?
There's always the Echoes launch that's still progressing and is kind of keeping a lot of people kind of entertained.
Oh yeah, that's true. Do we want to dive into Echoes? I'm not sure. Like,
I don't know if we want to dive into that too much, but I just would like to share that today Reaver was actually accused of being a bot and locked out of her account. So it's not just in Eve that she gets blamed for being a bot. Apparently, it's also true in Eve Echoes. So we already reached the ban thing, and that is just back to the fact that the Eve Echoes market has launched in a very different mode than in Eve Online. They have some very strange rules, all most likely based on attempting to handle botting and RMT, which might be a little bit more rampant on mobile platforms. So aggressively, she's been shut down, and she's been raging a little bit about it, and we've been having some fun looking at the UI, because the UI seems to be fairly decent for most things in the game, but when it comes to market stuff, it's really weird, and it's got some very strange translations, I would call them, where it's like, that doesn't mean what you think it means, so I don't know what you're trying to inform me about. Like, we have, they give you the equivalent of almost like a kill mail when your order concludes in the market, but it doesn't give you the information that's relevant, and all the terminologies are like weirdly wrong. So yeah, there's just a lot of strange shenanigans, and the actual price developments are completely out of whack, a lot worse than I had actually predicted. So it's just going to be fun to follow. It's a very strange development happening over there, but it's massively popular, and people are enjoying playing it. So I still think that it's definitely worth following and trying out, because it's so easy to try, right? It's just click and you're in, right? And whether you're using a phone or a tablet or an emulator, it's really easy to get in and try it out and have some fun with it. And well, at least Randolph is playing it, so it can't be entirely horrible. And
no, it can't be that bad.
Well, and he even says some good things about it. So, well, he's a gentleman and all, but he likes those kind of fun little games, and it's definitely worth trying, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I do apologize, but this is the part where I have to tag out, because I'm organizing a fleet to go into Niarja and join the fun there.
Ooh, okay. Fair enough, man.
Please do so on the trick side, please.
No, sorry. No.
Damn it, Niarja needs to burn, dude. It needs to fall. Otherwise, this whole news cycle will die.
It is bouncing around. Like it was like going towards sort of like it was at 80.
Seems to be in a deadlock.
Yeah, it's at 80.
Yeah, it's at a bit of a deadlock. It's kind of being pushed to and from, like between the sort of 80 mark kind of area. Like it hit 80, which we thought it was kind of like crazy, and then it like moved back to 79. I just checked it now. It's actually at 81 now. So both sides are basically making trying to push it as hard as they can to sort of get it there. It seems to be going the trig direction, but.
If it hits
the game isn't over yet.
There's probably going to be a lot of ships being blown up in Niarja for the next couple of days.
Oh yeah, well, it may become a graveyard.
I think it's kind of worth mentioning that it does look like it's doing something quite interesting that we did cover a little bit, but maybe not fully, because I think it's kind of worth mentioning that it looks like more and more looking at doing almost like a proxy war with this thing, because if we get even the slightest hint of proxy war, where you almost get Pappy on one side and Imperium on the other, this could definitely develop into almost the drama of the day, because most people in those groups will say, oh, it doesn't matter, we don't want to take part in it, but still, if it becomes a proxy thing, that added joy of being on the side that eventually wins, right? So I just think if that's going to be what happens today, that you're going to end up having Imperium on the trick side and Pappy on the other side, it's definitely a bit of a drama, but it's just whether they actually manage to make it there in time.
Yeah, exactly. And to be completely honest, I think I think in terms of news, we've kind of exhausted like the what we want to kind of get done for today. So we'll probably kind of call it, I guess, here for the moment. And we'll chuck you guys. We'll throw a raid to CCP, who's basically carrying on I think they're still carrying on running them. Just
yeah, they are. They are definitely.
Yeah,
and
so they're
up to 800 people in there. So.
Yes, so they're covering the stuff going on in Niarja. So like we'll pass the buck over to them, and you guys can carry on keeping an eye on what's going on there with CCP. So thank you very much, guys, for coming and chilling out with us for today. You should check us out obviously on YouTube. Give us a sub there. Obviously, that's kind of basically just like a follow on Twitch. So if you if you haven't followed Talking Stations on Twitch, then I would recommend it. But any and all kind of way to support us would be fantastic. Like check out our videos on YouTube and comment, all that kind of jazz. It would be fantastic. But yeah, thank you very much, guys, and we'll pass you over to CCP. I think, if I can. I'm not entirely certain if I can. God damn it.
Type /raid, buddy.
Ah, yes, that's the one.
/raid.
No, I don't. I don't have action for that at the moment. We're going through a little bit of a progressive kind of like, going through a bit of a progression in terms of, shoring up some security our end. So we'll have that ironed out at a later date. But at this particular point, just check out CCP. I will do a shout out on in the stream chat, so you guys can go and check out CCP in that particular way.
I would just like to say thank you to CCP for all this. This is great.
You're in such a good mood today, Cable.
Thank you so much, CCP. I very much enjoy this.
I just wanted to use his Zernitras.
I mean, it's about goddamn screaming time. About it. Yeah, but they're screaming about it now. Is the numbers right?
Yeah, I mean, Cable's been waiting for an opportunity to get those Zernitras blown up.
I mean, I've used them before. Lately. It's just so lame.
The same with your recent rate of losing dreads. Do we really want to field the Zernitras?
All right, guys. So, see you guys later.
Thanks, Maccloud. It was awesome.
Move to public then.